you, therefore you need to understand. So you need to understand the language. It's going to be English. You're going to be conveying your own difficulties in case you don't understand it. You're going to be seeking clarifications, right? And all these are not my word. These are synonyms which I picked up straight up from the dictionary. But it fits in so well with what we want in our people. Reporting. The kind of jobs that you get into within a few months of working, you will start reporting what type of work you do. People report attendance, people report progress in subjects, scores, and so on and so forth. We do similar stuff. Presenting. Handing on. You know, you get a new person who comes and joins, you need to hand on information to that person, get that person trained, relay the information that you need to pass on. Spreading, dissemination, all these are dictionary words, synonyms for communication, and this is important. My first question when I started was, is communication a tool? Many of us are tempted to say yes, but it resonates so well with what Professor Paul says, that communication is not just a tool. He said he probably used other words for it. It's the way your character develops. It starts defining you as an individual. And mind you, I don't mean English just yet. Any language that you communicate, how you communicate, lands up defining your character. There's enough information that has been provided as to what the importance of English language is, and therefore today is all about the language English and why it is important. The way we use it as a student, very, very different, very informal, filled with slang, filled with an entire informality. The need of wanting to communicate in English as a student is very different. Some of them are good, some of them aren't. The proficiencies differ, but the objective is more or less the same in a student life of why you're going to be using English. So therefore you'll have a smattering of different languages coming into it and carrying on with a very different type of English. But when you're working, it changes. Your proficiency of English that you need changes according to the role that you will be doing. And think about it. What could I mean by that sentence? Anyone wants to take a shot at it? What I mean by the second one? That as per your role, what you do, the proficiency of your language needs to change.
Like if you're working in a multinational company, your slang should be certain.
Okay?
If you're working with companies like, like UP and all, then there again different words, pronunciation, slang differs.
Okay?
And sometimes in place like India, most of the sentences, mother tongue influence again.
Right? Which is still fine, because she was very, very clear that, in a language, a fluency, if it's with grammatical errors and pronunciation, it's a livable thing.
And workplace, you can take like BPOs and all, there's
Forget BPO, just look at workplace.
Being jargon.
Jargon. Yeah.
and expression.
Function, the type of role that you do.
Different levels.
Levels, yeah, probably a CEO of an organization or a senior management would have a very different set of requirements, right? We would have a very different set of proficiencies that are required. And hence, everyone has a job if they can speak the language. But at what level you can speak matters. Now it doesn't mean that necessarily everyone has to will get into that particular level of higher English proficiency. But then there are jobs available for everyone. Different proficiency at different level, whether it is an hierarchy or whether it is the type of role. What do I mean by type of roles? For instance, let's look at, now coming to BPO, what type of roles do we have? We have got roles that are customer connecting, that are customer facing. What do you think should be the proficiency of English for this?
Coming down to their level and understanding.
Your role is to connect with a customer. Whether you connect with a customer in a sales job, whether you connect to a customer in customer service, collections kind of a job, or anything, whether it's on the phone, physical, personal, written,
Need to communicate.
right? But your role is to connect with the customer. So therefore, what should be the proficiency of your language for such a role?
Interpersonal skills.
Proficiency of the language to begin with.
Clarity.
Clarity.
Simple.
Okay, okay, I'm looking for answers like at what level do you think it should be? Average, medium, good, bad,
High.
very high, right?
No, not very high.
Not very high? Okay.
Not very high. Because customers.
So where will you need a very high? If not here, where will you need a very high? When the customer becomes a privileged one, then we need a very high English language, okay? So if a customer is not privileged, are you a privileged customer of the cell phone company that you subscribe to? No, but what is a privileged customer? Privileged customer would be someone who's got some special billing status maybe, right? Something like that. Oh, you're a VIP, right? So if you are a customer, and let's assume, and I don't think I'm wrong, that you're not a privileged customer for the mobile service that you subscribe to, right? What will make you happy? Someone who speaks with you in English that's not so good, or someone who speaks with you in English that's excellent? Who do you think will have a better competency to deal with you?
Who will understand me? Who will understand me properly?
Right? So when we say excel in English, are we saying that the person's vocabulary has to be very good and uses difficult to understand words? No?
It should be simple, clear, and crisp also. And time should be maintained. What we are
Straightforward.
Straightforward. That's what we are looking for when we are trying to hire people for these kind of roles. Technical roles. Right? A person is programming, a person is stuck to the computer, not interacting with anyone, probably only the system and his program manager, or interacting with his project manager, or at times interacting with the customer who's given the work to them. In this sentence, I have actually defined 3 different types of roles. And each one needs a different proficiency. The beauty is that as your proficiency improves, a person who's a programmer can start because you speak to a programmer in the language that she is comfortable in, she will bowl you over with the ideas that she has. Right? She struggles when she needs to speak in English. And hence, for that tacit knowledge that lies in her, if it needs to be translated, then she needs to know this language because everyone is proven over here that it's a universal language. And hence, the role changes for that individual. A programmer can get into a client-facing role. With added skills, better skills, improved confidence, which are softer aspects, the person can become a project manager. English language allows you to open yourself up and expose yourself to different facets of what work you can do. It opens up your horizon because that's the kind of exposure it gives you. Administrative clerical roles. Right? Look around yourselves. You may be able to live with an administrative and a clerical person whose English is not very good. But what if that person's English is very good? What does it tell you? What are you tempted to do? What comes to your mind? Let's say you've got a clerk who speaks excellent English for some reason. But he's a clerk. The moment you hear this person, you hired him as a clerk, but he speaks excellent English. What do you think you will do with him or her? Huh? Interact more with him. But what else are you tempted to do? Give more responsibility. Try and see and evaluate if this person can do something more. I'm not saying it, you're saying it. Right? Finance and accounting. I hire more than half my people for these jobs, finance and accounting. And for some strange reason, I have come to live with an understanding that commerce graduates or finance and accounting folks don't speak good English. Am I right?
Yeah, yes.
Why?
They are good with numbers.
Why? You know, look at this situation. Our entire education is in which medium?
Not always.
Okay, let's go to percentages. I agree. I agree with you. And you got a very valid point there when you say schooling. By and large, from a percentage wise, significant percentage, more than 60-70% of the time the medium is English. And I agree with you when you mentioned the school point. The foundation of English is laid in school, period. Therefore, when you have to do something with English later on, then you need people like yourself to help us with improved English. Right? Absolute transactional work. That means the person is only looking at data, keying it in. Looking at data, keying it in. Logic says that you don't need English here at all, as long as the person can read that English and type that English. So we have got all kinds of roles. Every role needs a different level of proficiency. Even then we struggle. We struggle to hire people with those levels of proficiencies. And what we found, I found personally, is that once they have some level of good English, for some strange reason their confidence changes. I'm not an expert, this is an observation, there must be some reason for it, but it just changes. I just made some deduction that it could be because of better exposure and being able to interact with a lot more people. Their social skills are better that are required. At the core of it always is that an individual who needs to get into any kind of a job needs to be confident and be able to successfully express or explain the purpose of that individual. That's it. If anyone comes to me for an interview, that's all that I look at. Freshers will not have experience. They will not be able to speak of many things. But is that individual able to express very, very clearly on what he or she has done in his young adult life? What do we look for? Communication. What else do you think we look for next? Louder. Communication. What else do we look for? What else do we look for? What else do we look for? This is the backbone. But yes. Yeah, sure.
Communication can be verbal and sometimes non-verbal.
Here we are being very clear.
Only
It's verbal and written. So in the non-verbal, if you get into the technicality and maybe you can tell me, non-verbal can be a body language, right? And that is not the communication we are looking at in this particular scope of discussion which I am in. But if you mean by non-verbal written, yes. Clear? And yeah, we look for passion and drive. So what would we look for in passion and drive? We would, when a student comes to us for interviews, we would want to know, how do you measure passion? It's so difficult, right? If you have to explain to a student, no, please, when you go for an interview, you have to show your passion, you have to show your drive. Many a times when my interviewers are in interviews and they say, why have you rejected this candidate? You know what, he doesn't have that What is that What do you mean by that? You have to be able to express it. So what is passion? And if we are like that, then how would students know? Passion is what? Let us say the person is going for an interview to Genpact. Has that individual taken out the time to understand what Genpact is all about? And in that, has the person taken the pain to understand what sort of a job she will be doing? Has the person ensure that the resume which is prepared is without any mistakes. Basics, very, very basics. Has the person ensured that when he or she is presenting herself for an interview is smartly turned out, is not late? All these are indications of some of the basic passion and drive that one can define. Getting the basics right. You come with a certain education. Have you brushed up those fundamentals? You'll be surprised. Forget freshers. People with 3 or 4 years of experience. Anyone from finance accounting background here? Anyone at all? Yeah? Okay. So I get people who are not able to answer basic accounting questions after having had 2-3 years of experience. Forget freshers. They answer tests pretty well, but they're just not able to answer questions on what are the 3 golden rules of accounting, for instance. What is a debit and credit entry, for instance? Very, very basics. So you need to tell your students that get those fundamentals right, get those basics right. Flexible. I run about 3-4 centers. So people come to me and say, I want a job only in Uppal, no night shift, and I want so much money. You know the answer to it yourself. And I keep telling them, where did your father work? Where does your father stay? If he stays close to the office, I say, where did he stay earlier? When did he move closer to the office? But these are things that we cannot achieve in that 20-second interview. You can't change the mindset. It has to start much before that. The reality check has to be done and given to the students much ahead of time, and that can ideally be done in college. And we spend some insane amount of money as an organization to do a lot of these trainings, and I'll let you know what those 1 or 2 trainings are later on. But it's important that we partner in this and we tell you what we look for and you are able to help us with that. Does it mean that everything is hunky-dory on our side? No, it's not. We've got a lot of improvements to do on our side to the way we interview. Who interviews? For instance, if a person who is not competent to speak to the other person and get that person's talent out, then it's a waste of time. An interviewer needs to interview for selection. Many a times I've noticed that the interviewer's attitude is, let me find out what this person does not know and then reject him. And if I don't find a reason, then I'll select him. That's how a lot of people get into with interviews. So yes, it's a two-way process. Everyone needs to improve. And on the flexible part, they need to be really, what I mean by flexible is a reality check, if I can describe it that way. You always start at the start point. And that is something which students need to understand. There are lots of media information that comes in, placements happened, this was the salary paid. So everyone goes for the 90th percentile. And thinks that, okay, if I don't get 90th percentile, at least I'm good with the 60th or the 70th percentile. So what I mean by that is, in the media you always get news, this college, that college, placements happened, the highest paid was 10 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 7 lakhs, depending on the type of college, company, job and all that it is. It goes up to a crore also in some cases. But everyone sort of from that particular college will aim. If the highest is 5 lakhs, they will aim themselves at 3 lakhs. It's good to aim that, but do it after you have understood what the job market is. I'm not talking about what your capability necessarily is at this point. They need to understand what the job market is. They need to do that particular homework so that their targets are realistic. And you always start at the bottom. That's the start point. What we look for are social skills, because that is what helps. And see, everyone says team player, team member. That's just one aspect of it. I would probably broadly categorize it as social skill, because your team is not only the team that you work in, but your social skill means the peers that you work with. some of the folks who are going to be assisting you, not because they're going to be reporting into you, but support staff that helps you. And then you've got your seniors. So you have a 360-degree interaction that happens when you get into a workspace. More or less like how it happens in college life also. You've got friends, you've got your classmates, you've got the chowkidar, you've got the teachers, you've got the principal. So it's a similar structure in office too. Right? And those social skills are very, very important. So we look for those. Now when we are going through these interviews, we are actually assessing these through a set of questions and situations. So we give them situations. We understand that they don't have experience. So for example, if I want to understand team player, we would want to know, have you worked in a group on any particular project? So people will come out with a youth festival, cultural festival, and then we will go a little deeper into that to assess. So you don't have to be experienced. You are always experienced is my personal view. You are always experienced. You just have to know how to state it. There's no person without an experience. Right? And it's left to the interviewer, who is a smart interviewer, to understand whether that experience is something which I can recognize as talent and hire. Any questions? Something that comes to your mind which you might have thought you would want to ask, so I'll just pause for a few seconds and then we could continue. Or just assimilate what I have shared so far and form your thoughts, and then we can go ahead.
Okay, again, this could be your perspective, and whatever you expect is absolutely right. I mean, I don't find any problem there. But again, if we switch to some other companies, so again their expectations could be different. Now we need to go for multiple companies for placement. So how to come to some kind of conclusion, or how
Sure.
to identify those?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I just add on to that? Okay, I've been involved in training a lot of organizations to recruit people at both the fresher level as well as at the director level. And what Avinash has presented across is at an entry level.
Yeah.
Essentially, this is what
Excuse me.
every organization would look for.
Right.
The gap is where you have interviewer who is at a different level altogether, and there will be different people who will interview at a different level, and their skills will make a difference. For example, when we teach people about interviewing, we talk about competency-based interviewing, we talk about performance-based interviewing, we talk about functional interviewing. So there are a lot of things which are spoken about, but what Avinash has put up on the slide here is essentially what any organization would look at
Absolutely.
at the entry level. So which is more or less, I think, covers every single aspect of, there would be maybe some psychometric tools that would be run. Tools might be different in different organizations, but the basics would be the same.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, adding on to what he said.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Adding up to what he said, the basics remains the same, but as per the requirement, for example, English for police people, how we teach, English for lawyers, English for doctors. So it is different for the target group is different, and the profession is different. The interview type is different. But as you said, the core values and social skills remains the same. That's what I.
Yeah. So both of them are right. You look at any, yeah. One more question? Yeah, sure.
Well, as you said, that there is a lot of subjectivity in the interviews which are done and left to the interviewer. What is the role of assessment tools in the interviews which you do in the context of communication?
Sure. So there are different ways in which we will assess people. I referred to AMCAT as one tool. So AMCAT is a very interesting module which is used. The way they have defined their modules and the way they've run their algorithms and that. So what AMCAT does is it's got a huge database of questions. So let's take up English, for instance. We use primarily their English, their quantitative assessment, and their logical reasoning ability. And then we use some functional modules of theirs in finance and accounting. So let's look at English, and it'll be the same for the other 2, 3, 4, 5 also. They've got a huge database of questions. The questions, when they are overexposed, they get out of the system. So therefore their database remains fresh all the time. Now the first few set of questions that are thrown to you are at a certain default difficulty. You answer those correct, the next few questions that come to you are with an increased degree of difficulty. This is the same model which is used in most of the competitive exams, GRE, GMAT, TOEFL, and so on and so forth. When that particular set of questions is for some reason not answered well, the level of difficulty drops back. So the score that you get is not really a score which is like a 60 out of 100 or a 70 out of 100 kind of a score, but it is a baseline. And each organization will define its own baseline. AMCAT will give its recommendation. Now why will AMCAT give its recommendation? Because they will give a recommendation saying, we have assessed 5 million students and employees in different geographies for different kind of job roles, and we find that the entry level should be at least this much for this kind of a job. So they have come out with those suggestions of their own, and that is sort of, I wouldn't say superimposed, but it works in tandem with what our requirements are, the way we wish to define them and arrive at those scores. So that's one way of filtering people. When we are looking for people for, say, a contact center job, and to us contact center means verbal and non-verbal both, right? We would put them through 2 types of assessment. One is the SWAR which I mentioned, that's one, it throws up a score again. And the other is, we have got a methodology that we have developed, wherein we got a team of certified voice trainers who answer calls, I'll finish this and I'll come to you, on a number. They speak to these people and they give a score which is on parameters of grammar, vocabulary, fluency, comprehension, and other things. The way they assess on this is, they ask them to speak about a topic, they ask them to repeat something, they ask them to read a passage, and they do a mock customer service sort of a call which is comfortable to that individual. So it's a free flow conversation that happens. These are some of the various assessments that happen before a person even hits the final interview, which is the line interview as we call it, in whose team and specifically the process that the individual is going to be working with. And that person takes the call on some of the functional experience and knowledge or the domain knowledge and all that he has or she has. Yes, your
The
question.
first one, SWAR, you said, and the second one is specific for your organization.
Yeah, because it's a methodology, it's not a tool. It's a methodology, right? So they speak to an individual and there is a scoring pattern.
As per the requirement of your organization.
Yes, yes. And if you get into it actually, in detail of it, you will find that it's no different from what anyone else wants.
Is it going to fetch in your training if they are more trained in that?
Can you repeat
Is
that?
it going to fetch if the people are going to get through that test? Then is it going to be easy for you to train them?
Yes, so we define trainability over there, and I'll actually get into that. We are able to define trainability, we are able to define readiness, we are able to define what the training time would be. So there is one default training time which everyone goes through, right? But beyond that, if there is any training time required, then at what should be the threshold of taking people at that score? Any other questions? Okay. So, since I was speaking about communication skills, I thought I'll just make you listen to a few calls which are assessed. These are actual live recordings of calls that have been assessed in that methodology which I mentioned, wherein people call our group of certified trainers and have a free-flow conversation with them. So I hope it will be loud enough. If it's not, we'll probably stick a microphone there. There's no significance to those numbers. That is just to remind me to tell you at which count I should start the recording for you to be heard. So don't try to read anything into that information at all. It's nothing.
already raising our country, but she's a baby. But hello, already raising our country.
Good evening, Sureesha. My name is Akansha and I'm with the Central Highway team of Genpact. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much. How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you. Well, I'm here to talk to you for some time, so tell me for how long you had to wait.
I was here for like 2.5 hours.
Fine. So, Sureesha, I want you to talk
You're able to figure out who the interviewer is, and right?
about your last travel experience, please.
Shall I definitely want to say you about, and I feel like sharing it with you, definitely, because I want to say about the travel what I had done with my fiancé, that's the Goa. Actually, in the last moment, we were having a plan to have a trip with Goa, like you have to enjoy there, it's like a Valentine's Day cycle. So we went there. So during the travel, what all the hurdles and things, what all the difficulties I have faced, it's like I'll never forget that. Because in the bus, what happened
Give me a
is
moment,
like,
okay? Hold the line, hold the line.
sure.
Alright, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Not a problem. So it was the last moment flying, so we did not get any train tickets or any of the flight availability. So at last we are supposed to off with the bus. So then we started our journey from Hyderabad. After starting from here, the difficulties what I faced, I never forget in my life. Because being a girl, traveling in a bus with a number of guys and we don't have any female company with us in the bus, and girls would be having this private private things which they cannot tell to the guys and some kind of difficulties they can't.
I have never been there. Can you tell me about your Goa experience?
For sure. I can say that it's my favorite place, and Goa is like 3 Goa, it stands for Sea, Sand, Sunshine. Because if you stand in a center place, then you can see North Goa and South Goa. From all the sides, you only see like, wherever you see, you only see sea, sun and sunshine. And Goa is like multicultural place. You can find different number of, cultural people over there. Because
Have you got a hang of, I don't think it was very audible, very clear, but did you understand, are you able to evaluate the candidate's proficiency level for yourself? So how would you define it? She knows English? What else?
She has patience.
Spaces.
Patience.
Patience, okay. The candidate has got patience. Okay. She narrates well, okay. So how's her English? So I want you to give me a judgment. I don't want you to give me the technicalities of English. Because unfortunately I don't understand them myself. So tell me, is it good, is it bad, is it average, is it okay? Are you sure? This is average?
Clarity.
No, just one word I want.
It will depend on the role that you're looking for and the fitment within that role.
Forget that also. Just in terms of pure communication.
Actually, she didn't communicate anything. She said I had a bad experience and then she wasn't able to put much more into that, minute and a half.
No, it's actually a longer conversation. I just paused it, yeah.
In the minute and a half that she had over there.
Yeah.
Even when she had time to pause and there was a break given,
Right.
and she had a time to collect her thoughts,
Right.
and then she went back to exactly the same
Right.
narrative.
Right.
I think that it is manageable, it's not bad.
Okay, it's manageable, it's not bad. Okay, alright.
Not effectively communicate.
Not effective in communication. Okay, alright. Okay. Let's listen to another call.
schematic. 1, 360 down, and I will take it with you for the next exercise. I want you to start with Okay? Sure. Great. So, Sharad, you have already worked with organizations reporting cost of experience there. So, could you please tell me something about your roles and responsibilities and also tell me about the organization that you are working with?
Okay. I work for a company called ADP, Automatic Data Processing. I work in the team called Retirement Services, and I was into a process called CSTO, Client Service Back Office, where we used to deal with a portfolio of US citizens who are going to retire. So I was, as I said, being said that I was into Client Service Back Office. I generally used to support all the documentation that are required for the client for their audit purposes. And also I used to prepare participant statements which gives all the transactions of all the details of the particular citizen who withdraw the amount from their retirement plan. And I also used to prepare executive statements which generally give detailed information of all the transactions that happen within that plan. And coming to, I also used to prepare PowerPoint presentations which give a detailed information of all the profit and losses of the organization.
Can you tell me the most challenging part of your job?
Challenging part of my job. So it is basically used to deal with lot of we used to deal with lot of documentation, and we have to contact the other teams and other also people for getting the documents. Which is really a tough thing because there is always a cut-off time where we have to send an email to the...
So how is this person's English?
Better than the last one.
Better than the last one?
Yeah, he's very crisp about what he's asked and he gave an answer immediately, whatever that is needed to do related time.
What do you think would be the difference between the two?
More professional, more focused, more professional.
One is, I think maybe somebody who just joined, who's not yet working, and the other person is somebody who's working.
So while there is yeah, you are saying something, ma'am?
The choice of words is according to his experience.
Correct. So that was coming out, right? So if I were to probably ask someone to evaluate this strictly on English, this person will get into my company and we will work with this individual to train a little more to improve the language and then put him into that particular job that is required. Most of these assessments that we are doing is for when we're looking for people for a contact center job, but some of them are for non-contact center jobs also. The earlier one that you heard, with great difficulty that person might be able to make it into our organization. It depends on what sort of a job that the individual is interested in. Today, the demand from everyone is that even if you are, so traditionally, finance, accounting, some of these back-end work as we call it, have always been that okay, we can live with if there's no communication because a team will have a team lead or someone who's a little better and all that, and that person will interact with the customer, so we can live with it. But now the demand from every customer and the reality of the job market is that each person needs to have communication skills of the level at least that you just heard. I've got another 1 or 2 calls which are obviously better, but this was just to give a sense of how we assess, and I cut them all into half. Then there is a customer service scenario that they get into, and that's how they assess people. But there's one key thing. A person, whether experienced or not, is always at a certain level of confidence. A fresher is at a very low threshold of confidence. An experienced person, better confidence, but not as confident as they should ideally be. It's always whenever you want to be testing yourself, you're always a little nervous, right? And that's another aspect which I think you folks can help build into the candidates, students now. So what can help? Some of these skills that can be changed, and what can help is from our experience. We have done it and we have found that it helps, right? So what I would encourage each one of you is to ask your students to do this. It doesn't matter. जैसे हम लोग हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, फाड़ दो बात करके. Just tear through the language and speak. It doesn't matter whether you're making mistakes or not. But do it with a person who can also correct it. Right? But you have to speak. I want them to spend more time on their smartphones. I want them to spend extra time on the internet. I want you to teach them how to copy. You must be wondering, I'm telling all wrong things. Whatever, you're supposed to tell them, don't be on your smartphone, don't spend time on internet, don't copy. I'm asking you exactly to do that. I'm asking you to tell them to spend time with their friends. I'm asking you to tell them to watch movies. Mandate and English only zone. So what do you think I meant by each of these? This is a no-brainer. Spend more time on the smartphones. You will be amazed on the volume of free self-study techniques and modules and websites that exist on the internet to improve your English. You don't know how to pronounce a word? Just type the word on your smartphone on Google, it gives you a little icon, listen to it. You want to understand the meaning, just type the word, and it's a beautiful device in your hand. We are just not using it for the right purposes. There's so much you can do. Spend extra time on the internet. Go there, spend time on the internet, do whatever nonsense you're supposed to do it, but also spend time on some good stuff. Right? Get away from the social media a little bit and spend time on finding out which is the free site that I can go to, which is the, just read up about what people expect in interviews. Read up about a company. How many students of yours can actually say, whenever I go to these campus presentations, where do you want to work? If I ask them in Hyderabad, where do you want to work? So I want to work for Facebook, I want to work for Google, I want to work for Amazon. I don't blame them, right? Because this is the generation, it's the new generation. They know these companies, they know these brands better. But how much do they know about those companies? Do they even know what sort of job to do in that? Because what they have read is the fancy part of it. That you get a free meal, you get a fancy meal, you get you have a place where you've got a place where you've got bean bags that you can sit on, you've got pool tables to work on, you can wear shorts and t-shirt and go to work. So they've read all that. But have they spent time on understanding what actually is the job that they'll be doing? How can we encourage that? And that's what I mean by asking them to use internet. Teach them how to copy. Ask them to listen to BBC, for instance. Ask them to listen to good English speaking channels. Ask them to listen to people who speak good English and copy the pronunciation from them, copy the words from them, copy how they speak, and that's what I mean by copy. And this ties in with the other one which I said, ask them to spend time with friends, encourage them to choose friends who speak well, so that they can learn from them. I'm from Nagpur. I was 9 years old in 78 when I came over here. 78, 79 when I spent time with people over here, my friends and all. I didn't understand a word of what they were speaking because they all were speaking English. I wanted to tell my teacher, I studied in a school called All Saints High School in Hyderabad. I was in 4th class. I wanted to tell my teacher, I am unable to hear well, I want to sit in the front bench. Now, I am from that era of schools, I'm sure similar to what you are, where in one class you used to have 60 students, right? Not like 20, 30 as of today. So there were about 7, 8 rows of benches and I was at the last. It took me a couple of weeks to frame that sentence and say to the teacher. The only reason I improved is because I spent time with those specific friends whom I could not understand, and I read a lot. And then of course school took over, and the school was a great school, the teachers were good and my foundation was strong, and I think I'm very good at my language. And that's what helps. And even when I say the foundation is laid in school, the battle is still not lost, even when you're in college, provided the commitment is there from the student. But the student's commitment is not enough at all, right? Tell them to watch movies. This actually, when we joined this industry, we used to actually ask our people to go watch English movies for two reasons. One is to try and understand the accent, and the other was to try and get the context of what happens in the US and all that. But of course, over a period of time, we have refined it. But trust me, this can actually help. This is actually being suggested by so many people that I've spoken to on language expertise. Tell them to watch the movies of the language that you wish to improve. When I was studying French, I didn't do a good job at it. So I used to go and watch French movies at the Alliance Française. Right? But then I realized that half the time what I was doing was I was reading the subtitles. But if you're not in touch with the language, it's finished. You'll never ever learn it. So how do you ensure that they do it? We actually used to have this in our offices. Maybe you could do it in your classrooms. You will speak only in English. And if someone did not speak in English, they had to drop, say, a 5 rupee coin or a 10 rupee note or something. And then, at the end of the month or week or something, we had one pizza party with that. And everyone was, playing the policeman to the other person. But it worked. Difficult, but it works. And most important, keep it simple. No one is expecting you to have the prowess over the language that you can write poetry or you can write some fantastic speeches or no, there are people for that too. Right? It's on your personal level, you can take it where you want. But keep it simple. Tell them that good English is not great words. Tell them to learn it in a simple manner. If all this self-study doesn't help, there are institutes which can teach you. Ask them to join those institutes. We as a company actually run what we refer to as a Junpat Training Academy. So whenever we interview people, incidentally, our measurement scale on communication is from 0 to 10. Till date, I have not come across anyone who is a 10. I think I was scored a 8 plus something. There was someone who had come a 9 plus. I go through about thousands and thousands of people every month. We get only 10% who score a 7. Rest all are below 7, and 7 is a threshold for our good communication as we define. You mentioned the CFR, the European Framework for Languages, right? When one of our partners who works with us on training, when he tried to assess these people, most of the people that were assessed, especially from the commerce background, they all were at a B1 or a B1 plus kind of a level. Not many hit even the B2. This is the most important. I tell this to everyone. Tell your students that you should choose a mentor, because all this that we are talking about is all gyan out of the window if there is no one who can guide them. And at different times it's a different guide. And for different reasons it's a different guide. As teachers you will play a certain role. As parents they will play a certain role. But a mentor, ask them to choose a mentor, define who's a mentor. So for instance, they want to work. So let their mentor be someone who's got the age that they themselves are at. They should probably try and find a mentor who is say about 10 years into experience and seek the right guidance from them. You should play the role of a mentor where you are able to guide them on these aspects. And this will for sure take you beyond the books. Mentorship will take you beyond the books, otherwise it's not mentorship, then you're just sticking to the teaching part of it. Choosing a mentor will help them overcome a lot of softer skills that are required for them to be successful in getting into a job, any job. And of course, choosing the right mentor, it's a no-brainer. The mentor's got to be right, otherwise he or she can lead you down a very wrong path. That's very important, in my view. It's a lot about